the LGA Environment Committee Chair. Thank you. I've been asked to introduce tonight's speaker, Jessica Baumann. For most of you in the room, Jessica needs no introduction. You've heard her speak, you've spoken with her, and you may... Technology, it's great. It's the operator.
And we put you in charge of the veg survey.
So, anyway.
Good decision, Jeff.
Yeah, stop touching it, John.
You're not touching it. Just talk to it. Don't touch the button. Okay, we'll try this again. All right, so.
It's you, Jeff.
The indicator. I'm not going to use it. I'm going to speak up really loud. Okay. So as I said, Jessica really doesn't need an introduction. You've heard her speak. You've spoken with her and you've seen her out on the lake. Jessica is with the North Carolina State Extension Service. She's an associate, and she is involved with the Aquatic Plant Management Program. She's been doing it for going on 7 years, 2018. And I know you'll all agree with me, we're very lucky to continue to have her supporting us. She's very passionate, very capable, and this program here owes a lot of the results are due to her effort. I want to say two more things to the audience. If you have questions for Jessica, I'm going to ask you to hold them till the end. The second thing is if you have any questions about funding or the fiscal management of the program, I'm going to ask you to hold them for Jeff Zimmer, who not only is the LGA president, but he moonlights as the Lake Gas and Weed Control Council treasurer. So he is in a better situation to answer those kinds of questions. So with that, over to you.
Hey everyone, I usually don't need a microphone, so I'm hoping that thing stays broken. Thanks for that introduction, John. For those of you who do not know me, I am an extension associate inside with the Product Plant Management Program at NC State. So basically my job is I oversee all of the management, the research, and the outreach for aquatic plants on Lake Aston. I have kind of a unicorn position in that usually extension associates are covering a county. I cover a lake, so I know Lake Aston very well. Prior to this position, I was actually a fisheries biologist with the Wildlife Resources Commission, and I was also on Lake Aston. So me and the girl have been together for a while. Today I'm going to talk to you about our aquatic vegetation survey. So we're going to talk kind of about the aquatic plant community that we have at Lake Gaston. And then I'm going to go over some of our problematic species, some of the treatments that are targeting those problematic species. But I do want to note, before we get started, that the treatments that I am going to start referring to are all facilitated by the Lake Gaston Weed Control Council. So there is a process in which we have a technical advisory group that goes to a stakeholder group that goes to the Weed Control Council. So all of the treatments and the recommendations that we'll talk about tonight have been thoroughly vetted. It's not just me behind a computer going, you get a treatment and you get a treatment. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we talk about the treatments, we have to talk about our volunteer survey and our monitoring efforts, okay? Because we don't know where to treat if we don't know what's out there and where it's located. At Lake Gaston, we have a very unique situation in that we have you guys, right? So the environmental committee and the LGA, your LGA environmental committee supports our volunteer vegetation survey. And because we have so many volunteers, we are able to get a very large data set for the lake. So this year it started in mid-August, went to the end of October. We had over 100 individual volunteers this year, which is fantastic. Over 500 active survey hours occurred. So that's not you prepping the boats or anything, that is you throwing rakes and actually being out on the water. We had 54 individual teams. And like I said, the LGA Environmental Committee is really the stars here. We collect over 6,000 points of data for Lake Gaston, which is 4 times as much as NC State would be able to do, or anybody else would be able to do if they just went out with a survey crew to do it. So it's an incredible wealth of information that we get from it. Of those 6,200 points, you guys collected just over 5,600 of them, okay? So NC State, it's a partnership. NC State will go out and collect data in the sites that aren't covered by the volunteers, but you guys are doing most of the heavy load. And here's a graph kind of showing you those data points over the last 10 years. And as you can see, y'all have been, it's been over 5,000 since. So it's a great effort. It's a great effort. 81% of those sites contain some sort of vegetation, so you guys are tracking it well. So here's my time to plug that our volunteer form for the surveys are already live for 2025. So this QR code will take it to you. We'll ask your information. We ask where you want to survey on the lake, and we will follow up in August with all of the details, but this just captures your name, lets us know you're there, you want to volunteer, and we'll take it from there in August, okay? So what kind of plant community do we have at Lake Gaston? Well, here's a graph that kind of is a snapshot and shows you, right? So we break our plant community into several different groups. We have emergent species, those are along the shoreline, they're coming out of the water. Our submerged species, they're under the water. Floating leaf are like our lilies and stuff that have a leaf that is floating. And then our algal species. So most of the community is made up of emergent species, most of that is water willow, okay? And then our second most abundant group is our algal species. Some of that's good, some of that's not so good. And then the rest is made up by our submerged and floating leaf. All of our species that were identified are what we would typically think that we were going to find at Lake Gaston. As I already said, water willow was the #1 most abundant species this year. Tying in at second was our native Cara, which is a microalgae, native, beneficial, and then unfortunately, also coming in second is Lingia, which is one of our problematic species at the lake. Trending these groups over the last 5 years, they've been trending about the same way. I do want to say that our suppressed populations and our emergents and our floating leaf and our submerged species is kind of expected. I'll get into it in a little bit, but we use grass carp in our hydrilla management strategies. We stock a high number of them. Along with hydrilla, they also like these 2 species, so we would expect for those to be also suppressed. All right, here I'm going to show you some distribution maps. Looking at our native species, #1, water willow. Many of y'all have been out at the lake, you understand that that stuff is everywhere. There is not a shoreline that really doesn't have water willow somewhere on it, so it's distributed throughout the entire system. Our second most abundant native species is Cara. Again, that is a microalgae, and it's really located in that lower basin. I want you to look at this distribution map and remember it when we start talking about Lingia, and really notice where Cara is really abundant and where Lingia is not really abundant. The other native species that's gotten a lot of chit chat about it over the last year is our eelgrass populations. It is really focused in that lower end of the basin. It is protected by Dominion's Shoreline Management Plan. So when we talk about people wanting to manage it or treat it, that's Dominion's directive, not ours. The problem with eelgrass, if you Google it, it has been problematic in the southeast. That's a different species, or it's a hybrid of species, okay? We have gotten eelgrass from Lake Gaston, genetically confirmed, and it is the native Neotropicalis, okay? So please don't Google eelgrass and think that that's what we have, because at this point, that is not what we have. But I will say that, you know, the yellow stars are where eelgrass was found this year. The black dots are where it was found last year. And as you can see, it is increasing its distribution. Its acreage has increased a little bit from last year to this year. It is something that we are monitoring. Okay? So we take that information from the vegetation survey, and those points go directly into our management strategies for both hydrilla and lingbia. These are our two problematic species in which targeted treatments are occurring for. So first we'll talk about hydrilla. It's been here the longest, so it's our first child, I guess. For those that don't know the history of the lake, hydrilla was first documented in Gaston in the 80s. Really became problematic in the 90s. Over 3,000 acres in 1995. So most of the lake looked like this. And NC State was brought on. We took a more active role in the management in 2005. And what we're doing for hydrilla is we use a integrated management strategy. So we use some herbicide-directed hydrilla, and we also use grass carp, which is our biological control. Okay? And we have to go back to the previous year's survey. So 2023, we had about 329 acres. The recommendations moving forward were to treat 198 of that and to stock a little over 1,300 grass carp. And in 2024, that is what occurred. Now I will say that grass carp funding is provided by Dominion. But the hydrilla acreage is facilitated by the Weed Control Council. The areas this year that were targeted for hydrilla treatments were Great Creek and Poplar Creek. And there were some in Songbird, Hub Quarter, and Big Stone House. Grass carp were stocked at the Poplar Creek program. We've been talking about the vegetation survey. That really gives us an idea and a snapshot of what's currently occurring in the lake. Okay, so let's talk about what we found for this year's survey. Right now, we were estimating in 2024 that we have about 289 acres of hydrilla within the lake. Here's a distribution map of that. As you can see, it's distributed throughout the system in small little patches. Okay? If we look at the trend data, this graph shows us total acreage from 2012 to 2024. And as you can see, after that 2012 to 2013 time period, we've been pretty much at a low maintenance mode for hydrilla, which is, this is the kind of graph you want to see. Eradication is not really a term we use in management. We want to keep it suppressed and at a low level. When we talk about hydrilla, we also have to talk about tubers, because this is what makes hydrilla so difficult to manage. Hydrilla will create these little potatoes, seeds. They're not seeds. The vegetation people yell at me if I say that, but it's the best thing for you to understand. They will produce these tubers. They're in the sediment. These guys can hang out for 7 years before they have to germinate, okay? So that's why you can be at your boat dock and be like, I haven't had hydrilla in 5 years. All of a sudden I'm inundated. You didn't have biomass for hydrilla, but you probably had a tuber bank that was sitting down there and all of a sudden decided, yep, this is the year, guys, we're going for it. So we had also, along with our vegetation surveys, we also do tuber surveys, so we can kind of get an idea of that potential growth that's within the lake. And this is a bunch of numbers and a bunch of different sites. What I want you to focus on is the arrows and the equal signs. Our tuber bank across the board is either zeroing out or they're all decreasing or they haven't changed. There's not a single up arrow. And that's what I want you to just look at, and that's what's important. So for 2024, just under 300 acres, we've got a low tuber density. For 2025, our hydrilla management plan is to treat a maximum of 200 acres and not stock any grass carp this year. Okay. Moving on to our other problematic species in Lingbia. If you don't know what Lingbia is, you're the winner for the day. Consider yourself very lucky. And yeah. I need to remember to take this off the slide, like the cover slide when y'all are trying to eat. I'm used to it. I'm good. People aren't. So, as I was saying before, hydrilla management, we started really getting control of it in about 2014, 2015 time period. Unfortunately, we had the opposite trend when we started to look at Lingbia acreage. Okay? I got here in that 2018 time period. I thought I was going to be dealing with hydrilla and grass carp, and you can see my pictures have changed. And I got the switch pulled on me, and now it's Lingbia. So phone calls started going from this is at my boat dock to this is at my boat dock. Equal anger between the two, I can tell you. All right, for those of you that don't know, Lingbia is a filamentous cyanobacteria, it's a blue-green algae. It is native, but it is a nuisance species. Year-round, you're going to have these benthic mats that are persisting, okay? So you are not going to see them, but they are there lurking beneath the surface. Once those water temperatures start warming up, you start getting about that 65-degree water temperature, you start seeing stratification in these benthic mats. So about the time that you want to go swimming off your boat dock, Lingbia's like, I want to come hang out with you at the surface. And we start getting this. And that's why you see it in the summer, but you don't see it in the winter, okay? It has multiple pathways for acquiring energy. It does not need those surface mats to acquire energy, okay? It can pull phosphorus from the sediment, it can fix nitrogen, it has a whole host of ways to survive and thrive. This is a picture of my ranch unit. Yes, this is 9 feet of water. That orange bubble you see is Lingbia. So that's about a 2-foot mat that is hanging out in 9 feet of water. Again, does not need those surface mats in order to thrive, okay? Well, I guess it's 8 feet. We found it at 9 feet. We look at management history for it. It was first documented in Lake Acid in the 90s. It's been problematic, like I said, since the 2010s. It has a different strategy for management than we would see with our vascular plants. Hydrilla, we were talking about putting a herbicide on it. We can put a herbicide on it, we can kill it, we can get the biomass to go away, and you have your nice open water again. Lingbia does not play the same way. It is a very difficult one to manage, and we'll get through that. It's not just Gaston either, it's problematic throughout the southeast. What makes it so difficult to manage? Its general morphology is really the problem. So what you see at the surface, these big, thick mats, are really made up of individual hair-like filaments, okay? That are, it's like a coin roll. It has viable cells that are stacked up on top of each other, and they're protected by this polysaccharide sheath, okay? It's very good at its job. It protects the filaments from UV, but it also protects the filaments from herbicide control. So the chemicals that we put in the water, not only do they have to get through this thick matrix of filaments, you know, move and be able to contact the actual filaments, then it has to get through that sheath to get to the viable cells. Okay? So I always think it's just wild that that's what you see, and that's really what you're dealing with. 2023, we had just over 1,300 acres of Lingbia in the lake. 2024 TAG recommendations were to treat 500 acres, and that's what occurred. Now, hydrilla, we put acreage through a model. It determines how much we can treat based on how much support for the grass carp population. You know, you don't want to completely eradicate it because you want those grass carp to be able to be there and have something to sustain them. Because remember, we're dealing with tubers that can last 7 years. So if you starve them out and then tubers come back, it's a problem. Our acreage for Lingbia is really kind of a monetary driver. It's very expensive to treat, and so that's kind of what caps our maximum acreage there. Moving forward, 2024, what did we find out? We have an estimated Lingbia acreage of just over 1,000. And this is the distribution map for Lingbia within the lake. Yes, it is distributed throughout the lake in heavy areas. Remember when I told you to pay attention to the Cara maps? Pea Hill Creek, inundated with Cara, not so much with Lingbia. Same with Blizzard, okay? They kind of inhabit the same benthic area, and there's a competition thing there. So if you go in the water and you feel icky grass on your feet and you don't really want to feel it, well, be thankful you're feeling it and not swimming in it. Now, you may look at that acreage and go, that's an interesting number. It is. For the first time since I've been here, I can say that we have actually decreased in Lingbia acreage, just over 300 acres. I ran that model, I ran it again. I gave the raw data to a colleague. I said, you run it twice. I've got to make sure this is correct. All 4 times it came out about the same acreage. So this is an exciting trend. I'm very excited to be able to say this, but I want to take pause and put a big asterisk by it, okay? Throughout the lake, as a whole, Lingbia kind of showed a depressed growth last year. Areas that were inundated with surface mats historically weren't really inundated this year. We found the mats kind of further out, not really where we're surveying with our rake tosses. So, yes, I think it's trending down. Yes, I think this is fantastic. But if it goes back up next year, and we were really trying to dial in what type of algicide combination works best for Lingbia at Gaston, what application method, what's the timing of those applications. So we had 4 years of really just tweaking it. Once we got a protocol that we were pretty confident with, in 2021, Weed Control Council was funding 300 acres. And we were sticking at 300 acres for about 3 years. If you look at our acreage estimates, you see that as soon as we go up into what we call operational level, right, we start plateauing, and we're not seeing that steady increase. We went up to 500 acres of treated Lingbia this year, and we're starting to see that decrease. So there's a visual of kind of what we've been doing from a treatment perspective. And we're seeing success. When I first got here, this was an area in Pretty Creek, 2018, completely inundated. I was questioning my life choices at this point, what I was getting into. My son, I used to have pictures of big fish, and now I'm doing presentations with this, and he's like, yeah, lost some cool points there. 2022, this is the same boat dock, and those little divots you see are fish beds. So fisheries biologists, I was really jazzed to see that, okay? What's important about these images, not only is it that the Lingbia is gone, but I also want you to notice is that time frame. It was 4 years of treatments that got us to that point. So it takes a long time to treat to start seeing these kind of results. Okay. So with Lingbia, not only are we looking at the distribution of it, we're looking at the density of those benthic mats. So when we're tossing our rakes and trying to determine where these different species are, for Lingbia, we're rating them. Okay, we get a little bit of mat material on it. That's a trace mat. The density of that mat isn't very thick. And it goes all the way up into Medusa here, which is a 4, which is indicated by the red dots. So trace, it's there, but it's not really thick, are the green dots that you see on the map. Orange are moderate mat densities, red are the thick. And along with that decrease in acreage, what we found this year is that our dense mats are kind of staying steady. But we are seeing the percentage of mats that are classified as sparse and moderate, though that category decreased into the trace level. So we are not only seeing a decrease in acreage, but for those sites, we are also starting to see a decrease in our mat density, which is a great trend to have. While some sites will respond to our treatments in 2 years, and some we're doing 4, and we're still got mat material there, it really has to do with how much the density of the mat prior to treatment, okay? Because for Lingbia treatments, what it's basically doing is it's just kind of burning off the top little layer. It's preventing new growth, and then it's just burning off that top layer. And so if you have a real thick mat, it may take 4 or 5 years to get down to where it's noticeably decreased. Another difference between hydrilla treatments and vascular plants where you put the chemicals on the plant and it disappears. Lingbia, this mat could be you could look at that under the microscope and it's all full of green, beautiful, healthy cells. That mat may also represent what I like to call dead soldiers, in which the sheath has persisted, but all the viable cells have exited, okay? So if you have Lingbia treatment at your dock, airboats go by, you're like, it's still there. This isn't doing anything. It totally is doing something. You're not gonna see the stuff go away. What we do see is a reduction in the surface mats. So that's a relief. But if you're still seeing those benthic mats after treatment, don't stress, it's working. It's just gonna take a little bit of time to get there. All right, I guess I just wanted to stress the density mat again. So this is our distribution for 2024 and our mat densities across the lake. So what everybody is wanting to get to for this presentation, I'm sure, is our management for 2025. The first treatments will start in 2 weeks. April 14th, that week of. They're usually here on Tuesday and Wednesday. They are the airboats that you see driving around. You'll see a blue chemical that's kind of going behind them. It's just the color of the copper. It's totally safe to be putting in the water. Here's a QR code. I do not have an active interactive map just yet. We're still working on some logistics to get that live, but this QR code will take you to the Weed Control Council. By next week, I will have an interactive map like this in which you can scroll and zoom into your property to see if you have been included in the treatment program this year or not. Typically, I'll say if you were treated last year, you're going to get treated this year. That's not the case this year because we have some sites in which I have not been able to find Lingbia on the rakes, and I've scanned it with our sonar, and I haven't been able to find it on the sonar for 2 years. So if it's 2 years of non-detect level, if you get taken off the treatment program, it's probably because your site is doing well, and we can take that treatment and put it to another spot. So if for some reason you're off, that's not a bad thing. It could be that you're seeing some good results. If you notice you are taken off, and this year you have regrowth, please email me, take pictures, and let me know that, okay? So, that's it. Again, here's my email address. Email me any questions or problems you may be experiencing. Here's another QR code. I'm I like making these QR codes of the dinosaurs, it's fun. Making part of I got a 10-year-old boy at home, so these are the things that we do. For this QR code, it's going to take you to a form. If you have hydrilla, if you have lingbia around your property, it's so important to report it, because I look at that reporting, all of those reports, when we're going for our management and we're trying to delineate our treatment zones, that is one of the tools that I use. And if you have pictures of what you're dealing with, even better, because then I can say, I know this site is inundated, and so I will prioritize, if I can, that site. So please, please use that reporting tool. It's very helpful for me to help you guys. All right. With that,
Thank you.
Where's Jeff? Jeff, I got that under 30 minutes. Write it down. Put it on the calendar. Somebody's phone went off earlier, and I was like, no, I didn't take my 30 minutes. Yes.
Well, can you talk about the water willow?
The water willow. What would you like to know about the
I
water
want to
willow?
know everything about the water
You
willow.
want to know everything? Okay.
Jessica, could you repeat the question?
Yes. Okay. So we have a question about water willow. I'll give you the synopsis of water willow. From an ecological perspective, it is very beneficial. It's beneficial habitat for our aquatic critters. It stabilizes your shoreline. It decreases sedimentation. But I also understand that it is not what you want along your shoreline in some places, and it houses other little critters that people may or may not want. But it is protected by Dominion Shoreline Management Plan. So they will not let you manage or treat or control water willow unless you are creating a navigational path to your boat dock. And that's not 30 minutes, Jeff. So
Navigation includes swimming.
Huh?
Navigation includes swimming.
It has to. It doesn't even include your jet ski floatable docks that you have on the side. It
I
has
ain't
to
talking
be.
about a dock. I'm talking about if I can't swim alongside my dock, you know.
Dominion allows a 10-foot channel directly into a boat slip. That is it.
That's it for water willow.
And
So you can
that wasn't
navigate
easy
in and
to
out.
get them to give them that, so
Yeah. So
we're making progress.
But with that, I will also highlight that that shoreline management plan has to go under review every 5 years. Its review is next year.
This year, sorry.
This year, sorry. It is 2025, isn't it? Thank you, John. Oh, now I don't know what year it is. Goodness.
So how do you get that attention, and because it's not all positive what that is, not just for that you don't like it on your feet when you're in the water, but I mean, it holds the, what do you call it?
Lower unit oil.
Oils. It stays there, does not allow it to go in and out. It does with the tide, let's call it a tide.
Yeah.
Everything else moves, but this stays stuck in there, so does all the trash.
John, do you want to speak to the shoreline management plan process we're getting into?
As Jessica mentioned, the shoreline management plan does a review this year every 5 years. So starting later this year, Dominion will kick it off. Before the public gets an opportunity to provide input, and they will, Dominion will meet with stakeholders, technical experts. They'll look at the state of the plan, look for things that need to change. The thing I want to stress here is when it comes time for the public input, and you'll read about it in the paper, the LGA and the Weed Council is going to advertise it. We're going to make it well known. Because in the past, and Jeff, who had my position before he moved up, he went 5 years ago and represented the LGA, and unfortunately the public turnout was
Dismal.
dismal. So here's the thing, if you don't like the water willow where you're swimming, or, and again, Jessica pointed out the great benefits of water willow, but we recognize that there are places where maybe we don't want it. And other natives as well, eelgrass, if you go up songbird and pigeon roost, there's other native vegetation. It can be challenging if you live in those areas and you're trying to swim or whatever the case may be. So, when you read about it, or when, pay attention to the LGA website, we will be reaching out. When that happens, if you wanna make your voice heard, you need to step up. Because it will take many people to help convince, not only Dominion, because it's not just Dominion's call, Water Resources Commission, all of the different state agencies will have input as to what can or can't be done. And remember also, Dominion has to comply with FERC, Federal Energy Resource Commission. They're licensed by them, and they have an environmental component to that license approval. And so those folks who support FERC have a say as to what can be done or not done.
It isn't, and John, isn't really, the reality is that FERC is the big dog in this because, and that's why, we need a big voice so that those far off federal bureaucrats are not, that's.
Ultimately, they oversee the approval
Yeah,
of the license.
those environmentalists are the ones that need to hear from the public.
And they will be part of that process with Dominion, so they'll be lurking. When the public is invited, they may be lurking in the background. So again, I'll get off the stage, but just when you hear about this, if you have an interest, you've got to come out and make your voice heard about the things you want changed or the things that you support in the Dominion shoreline management plan. That's the only way to get change.
Yeah, don't think Dominion as much as FERC. I mean, this is politics, folks.
Well, again, but in this case, it's Dominion who's going to have the whole public meetings. FERC will be there. Obviously, if you come away from those meetings with Dominion unhappy, you can reach out to your elected officials who may have the ability to reach out to FERC. But FERC is a big bureaucracy, and I think if we make a local case here, we can have an opportunity to affect the plan. As Jeff said, and Jessica alluded to, in the past, you couldn't even treat that access to your boathouse for navigation purposes. And Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but last year, you did make a little headway, at least initially, with trying to get more flexibility in the treatment of natives. But again, some of the other agencies kind of quashed that down.
It was the last time that it was up for review.
Yeah.
It was during COVID, but yes.
And we are in contact and communicating with Dominion and other organizations about the problem, the challenges with native vegetation. Native vegetation is great, but it can overtake things and create problems.
Yeah, think about this. Those natives are out there and they're competing with these noxious and invasives. We may not like it right at our beach. You might not like it walking in with your feet, right? But they got a home here. And we have to support native vegetation to a certain extent. If we try to exclude it, you won't have a lake. You will have one nasty mess. So it's a balancing act, right? How we manage the noxious and invasive and promote natives. That's a big part actually of how we're in our overall management.
There's
More
a delicate
questions
balance
for
between
Jessica
the two.
though.
Yes, Judy.
Are you still doing the sonar all the way around the lake?
So Judy's question is, are we still doing sonar scans on the lake? Yes, we are. I don't really highlight it. This is mainly for hydrilla management. But just like you guys have Lowrance units on your boats, we can scan using our Lowrance units, and we can take the recordings of those scans, upload them to an online service, and they will turn it around into how much biomass is located underneath the surface. So not only are we getting surface acreage estimates, but we can also get an idea of how much biomass is under the water. And that figure kind of goes into our grass carp stocking model that we use with the Wildlife Resources Commission. These aren't just numbers that we're pulling out from the air. For the grass carp model, it tells us, it estimates how much biomass is under the water, how many fish it thinks is in the population right now, and that's what drives how many fish it thinks that we need to stock to maintain.
Is there any correlation between the water willow and the freshwater mussels? Do you have any data about that?
Don't have any data with direct correlation. The problem, well, not the problem, one of the things is that Gaston is artificial, right? And so the mussel biologists with the state agencies, they're really focused on our threatened and endangered, our federally threatened and endangered species. So they're focused towards natural systems, 'cause that's where they are. With all of this going on, and because I happen to be real good friends with the mussel biologist with the commission, I have roped him into working with me, and we are starting to look at the tidewater bucket mussel that is in Lake Gaston. So that is, it's kind of opening up people's eyes of these artificial systems are housing some of these listed species. I know when I'm in the water willow, I can find some of our native, paper pond shells, our smaller mussels, but there's no data that actually correlates them. But we're starting to kind of look at our mussel population in Gaston.
I have a pretty large group of the mussels that are living in the water wheel in front of mine.
Okay.
And some of them are up to maybe 4 inches, so they're big ones.
Are they oblong?
Yes.
Okay. Those are probably paper pond shells, but those are good. Those are natives.
Yeah, they're filter feeders, right, so they don't need the water.
Yep. They're very good for the system.
So are the other ones you were just talking about bad or good?
They're good. They're good. The only bad ones that the undesirable ones are going to be the, what do they call them, bucket shells or bucket clams now? But it's the Asiatic corbicula. They're like the small round ones, and they're real white on one side and brown, and then they'll have these massive die-offs. They're very small. Those are the ones that are undesirable.
Wow.
Everything else is good.
Why are they bad?
Because they will outcompete our native mussels. If you go into a corbicula bed, it's like walking on stone, like little pebbles, right? There's so many of them. So they're outcompeting our native mussels for habitat and food resources. And they can also that's a lot of filtering that's occurring in that area. So that's the main reason why they're not wanted. In the back.
Yes. What is the copper compound that's spreading by airboat, and does it have any effect on the eelgrass and the willow?
Okay, so the question is, what kind of copper product is being used in our lingia treatments with the airboat, and will it impact eelgrass and water willow, correct?
Correct.
So our copper product is a chelated copper product. Captain XTR is the trade name for it, but it is a chelated copper. It will not really impact water willow. It will not control eelgrass. There has been some that it will knock it back maybe a little bit, but it won't really put a big dent into it. It may have a little bit of effect, but not much. It's an algicide, so it is targeting algae, and it's targeting that lingia.
So is it copper sulfate?
I'm sorry?
Is it copper sulfate?
It's chelated copper. So it's chelated copper is used because it's a lot more environmentally friendly for our fish and other aquatic critters. You're welcome.
Any more questions on vegetation management? Oh, boy.
No, Wally. Yes, Wally.
You commented that in some cases Limbia has been going to deeper water. Is there a certain level that it won't go because of sunlight getting to it or something?
I have seen it at 9 feet in Gaston. I don't know if that is a bathymetry restriction. Talking with our applicator company, they've seen it up to 12. So Lingbia can pull out of the light spectrum, out of a different spot of the light spectrum, and those can penetrate deeper into the water column. So it doesn't rely on your typical littoral zone that all of our other aquatic plants deal with, because that's as far as those beams will penetrate into the water. They can go off another part of the spectrum that's much deeper. So to answer your question, I don't know if we know the depth limit for it. It would also deal with water clarity as well. But in Gaston, it's about 9 or 10 feet, so that's why when we're doing our lingia treatments, we just go on the 10-foot contour of the lake, and we just treat all the way out to that 10-foot because that's where we feel like our limitations would be.
Thank you.
Yes.
We have Lingbia in our code. Does people throwing all their leaves and stuff contribute to the Lingbia and make it worse?
It's not like your platonics algae. So nutrient inputs are going to drive blooms and like your algae that kind of floats in the water column. Lingbia, it's not as much of a driver for that because it can use photosynthesis, it can pull nutrients from the soil. So there are areas of the lake in which they are completely undeveloped coves, and they're just as inundated as our coves that are highly developed. So that doesn't seem to be a correlation for this stuff.
But for the other vegetation,
But for other vegetation, yes, the nutrient input will drive their growth, but for Lingbia, no. It's not a main driver. Judy.
So, what I just heard you were talking about water clarity. So what I just heard you say is that the lake is in turnover, you know, it's muddy, I can't see the bottom. So, I don't know, 2 feet maybe. What I just heard you say is that this turnover has no effect on the growth of Lingbia because the water clarity does not matter.
Well, and your turnover is not going to last long enough. So the lake is going to have a natural turnover where your bottom layer of water is going to flip with your top layer, and it doesn't last. When you're talking about water clarity, I mean, we're talking about a couple of weeks of water clarity that it's going to really impact. So.
I have pretty much a monoculture of water willow in front of the house. Now, is it okay to bring in like pickleweed or something like that, and so that it's more of a polyculture?
If you want to try to outcompete it, yeah.
Kind of,
It depends on what you're going to bring in, but yeah.
yeah, I don't really want to outcompete it. I just want to make it bigger.
Bigger. Oh, okay. Well, that's good. So Dominion has, if you go to their shoreline management plan, they have a list of approved native species that you are allowed to use in your revegetation efforts. So as long as it's on that list, then go for it.
Because we had a die out last year where the middle of the water willow just died. I think we talked about that before.
Yeah.
I was just trying to fill that back in.
Yeah, it looks like, when I first started working here, I was like, it looks like a dinosaur just went and laid in it, and like a big bed, but that's kind of how it does. It'll just die off on the middle or it will float. But yeah, just be sure to look at the shoreline management plan for your species. That's what I can say to that. In the back.
Are there approved, private companies that you can hire to treat around your dock area?
Yes, so for Dominion, they have to be a licensed applicator. And if you go to the Weed Control Council, they have the information for the applicators that we use for our treatments. But there are others out there that, as long as they're licensed, you can use. And I encourage private treatments because it just puts more, it increases that treatment acreage, right? Beyond what the Weed Control Council can do. Private treatments drove the decrease in hydrilla population as much as the Weed Control Council treatments, okay? So. Is that it?
Real quick, how many of you have been part of the survey, the vegetation survey? Okay, if you take nothing away from this evening, you should take away the fact that the LGA appreciates what you do, and volunteering your time. Wally, Judy, John are all coordinators of this. They spend a lot of time getting the equipment out, making sure the equipment's ready to go. Keeping the process going every year. And we appreciate what you guys do, and it's kind of a joint effort. If the LGA and the volunteers were not engaged in this process, you would not see these results. This doesn't happen, willy-nilly. I mean, this is This has been a long-term effort. We bring a lot of resources to bear, and the volunteer part is a big, important piece of that.
Yeah, I get to stand up here and say all the good results of your hard work. Y'all are the ones that are driving and facilitating this, so I do thank you.
I do have a question about the way for water willow is if you can do a 6-foot thing, it's so prolific. It's gonna grow back the next year. Like ours bloomed and went covering our whole beach. That's about 20 feet in one season. It was clear before, now I'm like, that's like 20 feet. So how do they maintain a 6-foot or 10-foot, whatever it is, clear? How do they do that? Because it's like lariat, right? It goes underneath. You've got all these fingers, and if you get it when it's young, you can get the roots out, but not when it's established.
You would do directed treatments at it. What that 10-foot is just saying, that's the amount of space that you can keep clearing in whatever fashion you need to clear
But
it.
how do you clear it?
There's herbicides that can be used for it, so it's chemical applications.
So it's not getting the roots out. So it's gonna keep coming.
By a licensed applicator,
By a licensed
no
applicator.
self-treatment, that's unauthorized.
Okay, but I'm saying,
But you have to keep doing it.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be a one and done.
like weed garden, like lariat. Yeah.
There's no silver bullet to control water willow around your dock.
No, it's just what I'm asking, because I don't.
Yeah, there isn't. Okay, Jessica, thank you.